Tad 937, Hartford's number one for hip hop and R&B. This is the Beat of CT. I'm Jenny Boom Boom, your host. My co-host DJ Meechie's here. Hi, Meech.
Hey, another Sunday.
Yes, sir. And of course, today, I'm really excited about it. We have Bo Doherty, who's the president of Special Olympics Connecticut here, and Nicholas Foligno, who's a committee member and volunteer for Special Olympics of CT. Welcome. How are you?
How's it going?
Thanks for having me.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So, I'm very interested in everything you guys have going on with Special Olympics CT. And Bo, I'm going to start with you today. You have gone from a robust program with numerous events in this pandemic. And how have you adjusted, with everything that's happening with this pandemic?
Well, it's been pretty interesting because I'm one of the veterans of the organization now. So it's always been, I started full-time in '82 in Massachusetts. All we do is run events. So you go from event to event to event. We have big, monstrous games. We have 4 of them in Connecticut. We have all the qualifiers that go to those. You have all the fundraising events. You do all the high school unified tournaments and middle school tournaments. And you go from that to all of a sudden, here come the breaks.
Right.
And all of us in Special Olympics around the world, there's 180 countries, 52 U.S. programs that are pretty strong. We all got an edict from the international office pretty much saying that you cannot do in-person competitions or training of athletes or fundraising of any particular effort with groups of people till June 30th. So when you go from going from event to event, night times, weekends, to what are you going to do? It's very interesting, especially when you've done it a number of years. So here's the good news. So the good news is that because we are global and, we communicate with friends from other states and countries. Italy and Minnesota has started to do some virtual games. So we started to go down the route of doing virtual summer games. And we have a full court press going on with a ton of athletes who are signing up for events within cycling, soccer, tennis, and track and field, where what they do is they choose an activity, they send in the video of it and what they got in terms of a score, and then on that particular weekend, we'll be delivering them a bunch of praise online. We have a big radio dance party on Friday night. We have an opening ceremonies where people from WWE and other friends of ours have all gotten on, and so that we do an opening ceremony. So we're changing what was physical to virtual right now.
Nice.
And quite frankly, I think we're going to go that way for a while. The last thing I do want to say, 2 things, and we can get into the details more if you want to. We have a Fit 5 program. We're one of the states that actually has a fitness director, and we've been doing fitness for a long time. So we have about 600 athletes that have signed up on this private page, because I don't want anybody to be able to get in there if we don't know they're legitimate. And they've been doing yoga, running, walking, nature hikes, eating properly. We have specialists that come in there all the time, doing yoga, teaching people mindfulness, sports psychologists. So that has become big. And the struggle for us is that we have 12,000 athletes in this state. So you go from 12,000 people who've been doing all these different things. Now, they don't always all do summer games. They don't all do winter games, but a lot of them do, summer and winter games. So you go from that to they're in a home, they're with their parents, they're in a residential program somewhere with staff, holed up. I talked to the CEO of Favar, a friend of mine, Steve Morris, today, and they have not loosened up anything till this week. For like 3 months, none of their people could work. All his staff have been working overtime. People can't really get out of their apartments really in a big way. They're all in these homes. So what are they doing?
Right.
They're sitting on the couch, and the obesity rate of our athletes in Connecticut alone and we do a lot of screening all the time, is 49%.
Wow.
So you start looking at diabetes, you start looking at all that other stuff. So, and our athletes are social, as Nick had said. So you've got all these people sitting at home, sitting in their apartments. Are they really moving? What are they doing for activity?
Right.
And socially, what are they doing?
Right.
When they're used to going to Special Olympics and going to the dance and seeing their friends, and that's one of the greatest things we do. Everybody talks about the sports side. When we do a dance and you've got 2,500 athletes, they're all dancing.
Right.
You know, our athletes, the inhibitions are not there. You know, they're dancing, and you have athletes from Greenwich, you have athletes from Plainfield, you have athletes from Mystic, you have athletes from Norwich, you have athletes from Torrington. So you got all these different people seeing each other, and that is kind of come to a halt. What I will tell you is that we have 71 head coaches in the state, all spread out throughout the entire state, and we have purchased them Zoom.
Oh, good.
They can stay in touch with the athletes. One of our programs down in New London area in Groton, she does bingo events every other week, you know, with all the athletes, just to keep them socially involved. So we've had to change, and we're going to continue to change until we see light at the end of the tunnel. In the fall, we might end up doing some in-person sports, but maybe small numbers, maybe more tournaments around the state. And we're going to have to keep a virtual element to this thing, because I don't see this going away for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty scary. They're talking about a second wave in the fall. So everybody's kind of proceeding with caution with every event, planned right now. Can I ask you a quick question, Bo? You said you got involved in the 80s with Special Olympics Connecticut.
Yeah, no. So in '76, I went to my first games in Tufts University for Massachusetts Special Olympics. And then '79, the commissioner of the Department of Developmental Services had a deal for me to work twice a week for Special Olympics in 1982 in Massachusetts. I worked full-time for them as the program director and came here in '86.
Okay.
So that's kind of, but when you're in Special Olympics, I'll be blunt, it is a family. So we're not like these independent little groups that, geographically, we have our own cultures and whatever, but we know a lot of people across borders, which is a really good thing. And so it never feels, for me, I define my work in Special Olympics as both in Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Where did you find that passion originally to get involved with it?
Completely it was one of these shocking things that sometimes you hear about with college kids. As Nick will laugh hearing this, my degree's in wildlife management. So I went to college, a specialized college, where all my friends were game wardens and they were forest rangers and forestry guys. And as a junior, this big institution in Massachusetts came after me and said, "We will give you a ton of money to run a program, not for me personally, but to run an outdoor recreation program." It was the first in the state of Massachusetts for people with intellectual disabilities. And I went and I got out of my car to this interview, and I was surrounded by 100 people who were all hugging me. and then I go in for the interview, and they're all hovering around the doorway. And as I come out, they're all hugging me, and that kind of really changed me. So I actually told people in a job up in Maine that I wasn't coming, and I completely shifted gears and ended up working for people with disabilities on my life. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow. And another question really quick. How long has Special Olympics been in existence?
So '68 was the first year in Chicago. I went 2 years ago. We had the 50th anniversary, and I went back. I went to Chicago. I was with all the founders. And, of course, Kennedy Shriver, who started Special Olympics, is not with us anymore. But I was with a lot of the people that started things, and it was unbelievable. They actually have a torch at Chicago at the Soldiers Field, this monstrous torch now that is lit all the time in honor of Special Olympics, which is, if you look around the world, this is going to sound crazy to you until this scenario that we're in right now. There are 4 million people in Special Olympics.
Wow.
4 million.
You know what? I never, until you guys came on the show today, I did not realize how big Special Olympics is.
Right.
And, and I was, at points in time, I'm like, yeah, that can't be. And then all of a sudden I meet the head of China, or I meet the CEO of India. And I'm privy because I've been around it long enough to see numbers. And you go to World Games, and it's a pretty incredible program. I mean, I remember watching, being, having ancestry from Ireland. Ireland in the World Games never walked in as Northern Ireland in the Republic of Ireland. They walked in as Ireland for as long as I can remember. And I remember at the award stand at the games in Minnesota, where the Queen of Jordan and the Prime Minister of Israel together are awarding medals and giving hugs and kisses to not only the athletes, but to each other. It's like, this stuff, it's funny because, when people do good things, it really changes you. And you get caught up in that. Nick will tell you that, one of the great things about our events is not only the athletes who come up and, are so funny and great, volunteers that show up, they're unbelievable. So you have this huge group of people who are giving up their time, usually good-hearted human beings with athletes. And when you're immersed into that, it's a pretty good feeling you come out of it with.
Well, speaking of that, Nick, how many years have you been volunteering with Special Olympics CT?
I think it's been about 28, 29.
Wow.
Somewhere around 90, 91. It's when they roped me in. A coworker of mine was getting transfers somewhere in another part of the company, working for Northeast Utilities at the time, which is now Eversource, and he asked me to get involved and help get equipment and supplies for some skiing thing the company did. Neither one of us knew much about it, so I got involved with that and went and got on the committee helping get stuff for the cross-country event at the time. Wow. And that's when the bug bit me, and I started with that, did that for several years, helped with equipment and supplies, and then I worked my way up and I was venue director for I think only a year or two. And then I was getting kind of tired of being out in the cold, I'm not going to lie to you. And around about that time, the same coworker came back and we were working together, and we came up with the idea to start a golf tournament to raise money to offset the snowmaking costs for the summer, for the winter games, because we're the only place, as far as I know, still in the world, Bo, correct me if I'm wrong, that actually makes snow for a Special Olympics event.
Absolutely, for cross-country skiing. And
cross-country skiing.
Yeah, we are it. No one does that.
Wow. The only one in the world that does it. We have a team of volunteers that go out in the field and make snow for 2 months, so there's enough to actually hold the events.
Wow.
In Connecticut. So we started this golf tournament to offset the cost of snowmaking. Well, that first year we raised $20,000.
Jeez.
And then it grew and grew. And then Bo actually, I think, introduced us to the Mashantucket Pequot tribal members who did a golf event in Rhode Island, at a golf course they had there. And they said, hey, we're building Lake of Isles golf course at Foxwoods. What do you say we join forces? So we did that. And fast forward now 4 or 5 years, now we're together with them. Now we're selling out 2 golf courses. Wow. And now we're raising $50,000, $60,000 a year.
Wow.
And then Bo calls me. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I was standing in Tim Hortons on my way to Rhode Island, to Newport, having a coffee when Bo called me and said, hey, I just left a meeting with Susan St. James. And I was telling her about your event, and she loves to play poker. What do you think? Is there a way we could fit it in? And that was the first year we came up with this. On Monday was my golf tournament. So we came up with the Susan St. James Texas Hold'em Poker Tournament on Sunday at Foxwoods.
Wow.
And now we're selling overnight packages. We've got corporations flying people in for this event. And it's grown into one of the largest golf events that they have at Foxwoods. This will be our 19th year, I think, coming up, if we have it this September. And last year was great. We raised $135,000 for Special Olympics.
Wow, that's so incredible.
That's amazing.
Between the two
That's
events.
awesome.
So it's just one of these little things that got legs and grew.
That's
and
crazy.
One of the great things that he does is, Nick and the committee will get together and go, and we want to restrict a little bit of this money. All of it's unrestricted except a little, and they send athletes to World Games.
Oh wow,
Wow.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
we sponsor the athletes. So I think we sponsored the athletes that went to Korea.
Mm.
Yep.
Sponsored athletes that went to other countries, and even the national games at times from some of the money that we make.
You sent some people to Seattle to the USA games, and next time around, I can't tell you where the next World Games are. It's top secret, but I actually know.
Oh, well, Bo, I mean, you know royalty and you know all the big stars, so you can
Right.
tell us this too, you know?
If I let the word out, I'll get killed, and they'll trace it back to me. But at any rate, Nick will be sending I think, two athletes to those games.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, that's so exciting.
You know,
Um,
Jenny, I've been to the Special Olympics twice.
Oh, I didn't know that. Where?
In Connecticut. And when I was in high school, the band director actually sent a couple of us up to play like during the games. So I was able to check it out and see just how amazing the program is, and like I still remember that till this day.
Wow.
And it was just beautiful, man. It was crazy.
Was that at Southern?
What instrument, DJ?
Yeah. So at the time I played like a lot of different instruments, but I think I was either playing drums or clarinet at the time.
How many years ago was that?
I've been out of high school for like
2 years.
11, 12, 13
Yeah.
years now.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
The reason I asked is that I'm the entertainment coordinator for summer games. I took that on probably about 10 years ago.
Oh, so that
you
you
remember,
could you just missed Meechie,
yeah,
Nick. You just missed Meechie.
Yeah. Mr. Lund. I'm not sure if you remember Mr. Lund or
No, that was before my time, I think.
Okay.
Well, I still DJs if you ever need a DJ for anything.
I'm
you know?
definitely down for the dance parties.
I got your name. You're not getting away now.
So that feeling that you had, Nick, being a part of, this even first experience and how everything has grown, is that what motivates you to keep going
Well,
with
actually,
Special Olympics CT?
oh, definitely. Getting to know the athletes. And you know what? Once you get to know the staff and everybody at Special Olympics, it's like you just want to hang out with them and you want to do more.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want to help in any way you can. But I really think my passion started, and this is something that I had won an award at Special Olympics and did a video. And what I really stressed was I think it's about planting a seed. And I think without me realizing it, my father planted a seed in me when I was a little boy. My father was a hairdresser. And a lot of times I'd go to the shop to get my hair cut, and there would be a person with intellectual disabilities there that my father befriended. He'd cut their hair for free. Or we'd go out to the diner in the morning to have breakfast if I was going to work with him that day, and there'd be a special needs person washing dishes would come out and talk to my father. And I was a little kid, and this had, I think really made an impression on me that I didn't realize until years later. Here I'm getting involved with Special Olympics, and there it is. So I think that had a lot to do with it as well. But really, when you go to the games, there's a lot to learn. You don't realize what you don't know until you go there. One of my first impressions was that the first year I was doing cross-country skiing. I'll never forget Big Mike. I watched him skiing, and he fell down. And everybody just kept yelling, "Come on, Mike, go, Mike." And the poor guy's crawling. And I'm like, come on, somebody go help the guy. What are they all standing around for? Now, after like 4 minutes, Mike crawls across the finish line. They help him stand up. He throws his arms in the air and goes, "Yes!"
Yeah.
And that's it hit me. It's about crossing the finish line. Doesn't matter how you do it. And that's when I got it. I said, okay, it's not about winning or losing. It's about being able to compete and just finish.
That's such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I still see Mike to this day. He doesn't do winter games anymore. He does summer games. He remembers me. I'll say, "Hey, Mike," and "Hey, Nick, how's it going?" So, and he's probably in his 50s now, I would think.
Wow.
But those are the things that happen that make you just want to go back every year. The other thing that's come out of it is my daughter, who's now 38, when she was a little girl, always came to the games with me. And now she's got her master's degree in special ed.
Wow.
So she's also involved in that now. And my wife is a para for special needs kids in Plainville High School.
Wow.
So our whole family's kind of been involved in with people with intellectual disabilities all around. So it's rewarding and fun.
Yeah, you must feel so much satisfaction being involved with Special Olympics CT.
Oh, yeah, you do, especially. This year's tough with the virtual games because I co-produce opening ceremonies. So you have a football field with a stage. I get a band to perform at the end of it, and work out all the sound guys and everything and get all them lined up. And this year, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So for this year, I'm kind of in the background just kind of watching because I got to figure out this virtual stuff too.
Yeah. So have you guys figured that out? How exactly you're going to do it? Because I know you've talked about how people are practicing and exercising and meeting up with their coaches, but have you figured out how it's going to work there, Bo?
Yeah, well, first of all, one of the things we haven't talked about is the unified or inclusionary piece of what we do. So we are one of the foremost inclusionary Special Olympics programs in the world. And what I mean by that is that the great bulk of our athletes, when they compete, do it with non-disabled people. So if you went into the high schools right now, I don't know if you've ever heard of Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference. It runs all high school competitions across the state. We've got 5 staff embedded into that organization who do, with the exception of the summers, different sports. All those sports that are run have athletes with and without disabilities on the same teams. And there's 1.8 million people doing unified sports around the world right now. And why we do it is because we know that when, in the old days, of course, you think about Special Olympics, you think about athletes just doing things together. We have found that by putting them on the same team with people without disabilities, they actually bond better and strongly. There's all sorts of research to prove this. And so, therefore, all our non-disabled kids in these schools are the ones that ensure that our athletes aren't bullied, are ensure that athlete isn't sitting there alone at the lunch table. All those like little things you think of when you think of our group. And those are real scenarios that happen that these non-disabled kids take care of. And invite, we hear stories of people with disabilities from parents who've never been to a birthday party in their life.
That's awful.
They get on a unified team, and now they're invited for the first time in their life. Sports, and Eunice Kennedy Shriver, she was smart about it because, she had her sister was intellectually disabled, Rosemary, and, her family was pretty good on the sports side, competitive side, but Rosemary was a pretty good athlete. And Mrs. Shriver used to tell me stories about her and Rosemary sailing together down the Cape, and they would win. And then Joe Jr. and Jack, President Kennedy, would lose. And then they'd go up to the house, and the father would be sitting there on the porch. So how do you all do?
Right.
Rosemary, intellectually disabled. Eunice, oh, we came in first, Daddy. And Jack, how'd you do? Came in third. Father was pretty competitive too. And so she figured out when that idea was thrown at her that would be a way of really changing the way we do business with our athletes. Now, what you wouldn't know, as an example, the starting center fielder for the Los Angeles Dodgers is a partner who was on a unified team for 4 years in Hebron. So we actually I run into people now who did unified sports as a kid and are now running companies. And it completely changes the way the world will go ahead when you have somebody like that and you've got people going, hey, I've got these people with disabilities, we would like to come in and as a workforce and help you. In the old days, somebody would have said, no way, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But now, if you use this in the way that we're doing it, it changes everybody's mindset. So we do a ton of inclusionary, unified activities. We've got 2 members of our board who are Special Olympics athletes. We train 65 of them how to become leaders. We do training all the time with these athletes. And we're really trying to get our athletes who generally in the old days, their only friends were either paid staff or their family members, to have people in their lives that are outside of that sphere. And we're being very successful with that. So that's that's the road that we're heading down and moving towards. And this scenario that we're in right now is a bit unsettling, but I will tell you, going back to what DJ and you had asked, if you look at the Fit 5 at Home program, it's not just Special Olympics athletes that are in that program. I've got a guy in there that was the number 3 guy for General Electric who lives in Ireland. He's in the Fit 5 group.
Wow.
And he posts pictures of himself walking around Ireland and doing fitness stuff in Ireland. You'd be shocked at some of the people that are in the Fit 5 group. So it's as much for non-disabled people who care as it is for the athletes. And so anything that we do virtual down the road, we will try to be doing a slant where somebody like Nick will be on a team with an athlete and they will do some virtual activity together. And certainly when it comes back to the point where we're doing in-person events, all our softball teams, our adult teams, they're all unified. All our soccer teams, they're all unified.
I never knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah. In bowling, we have 1,600 bowlers. About 800 of them are unified.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of the way of the world when it comes to Special Olympics now. And we have to, as we start looking at this virtual stuff, we've got to make sure that we don't become a segregated program.
Right. So I wanted to know, what is the criteria to be involved with Special Olympics? If you want, say I'm an athlete and I want to get involved, I want to compete, what's the criteria? What's the age group? And
well, we have a program for 3 to 7-year-olds called Young Athletes, and that's physical and occupational therapy. We're in 30 schools with that. Then after that, we have an elementary school program, a middle school program, and a high school program for our interscholastic program, which is a separate, completely unified event. On the traditional community side, you can be 8 years old and older in order to be involved. And the primary thing is intellectual disability. However, many of our athletes have cognitive delays or autism, physical disabilities. They might have cerebral palsy as well, and other scenarios. So if you really do look at the great bulk of our people, it's a little bit broad. A lot of people who are physically disabled that are not intellectually disabled, there is a sports program for them. But some of those folks become partners on unified teams. It's a lot more broad, I would say, now than it used to be, because it's impossible to turn away. It's hard to turn away people let's say at the high school level. You get a bunch of folks who are clearly intellectually disabled. Then you get somebody with autism, high spectrum, and they want to be on the team. I said, no.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If they want to be on the team, they can be on the team.
So the big thing, though, what we got to do is make sure that the ratio of non-disabled people is the same because you don't want this to become then a segregated group of people with all disabilities.
Right.
That would not be what we would want down the road.
And also, are you looking for volunteers like Nick?
Right now, I'm going to say that we're in a holding pattern. Because
Okay.
if we were to unleash the doors and have the multitudes come at us at this point in time, we wouldn't have anything for them to do for a while. So I'm going to say, normally I'd be going, oh God, yeah, Jenny, thank you so much, because we got all these things going on. But I would say for people to, if you're a big fitness person, I would strongly consider going to our homepage and looking at Fit 5 at home. You'll be asked 3 questions. You may have to be screened. But if you go through that and you're a bit into fitness, then we would welcome anybody to be a part of that. In the meantime, I would say let's wait and see what happens in the fall.
Okay. And what is your website?
So it's www.soct.org.
SOCT.
.org. Yep.
.org. Okay.
Yeah.
Or just Google Special Olympics CT.
Yeah.
Put you there.
And we'll find you guys over there, right? Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. This was
Yeah,
so
this
great
was
today. I
amazing.
really enjoyed it. And when we get things back on track, right? I definitely want to come and attend and help out however I possibly can, because I
Yeah.
think this would be just spectacular. I know Meechie's on board too.
Absolutely.
Meechie, when you talked about Special Olympics, when you got to go, you look so like happy.
No, it was great. It was a great experience, and it was just one of those things where you just don't forget. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? After all these years, I still remember being there. The whole experience, and it was great.
That's
what keeps
awesome.
me coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why Nick's like, I'm in it. I
About,
ain't leaving. Nick, how long did you say you've been volunteering?
about 28 years.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
such a long time. Well,
Done
it sounds,
a lot of different things. I did want to mention one thing when Bo talked about unified sports. So I had no family members with disabilities when I started with Special Olympics. 10 years later, I had a niece who was born with autism, and she is now 21. And it was so cool to be able to go to her high school and junior high school games and watch her participate in unified sports.
yeah, that's so
So
great.
it kind of was, for me, it was full circle. It's like, wow, now I have a family member that's actually participating in this, something that I've been supporting for years.
That's
Right.
so great.
amazing.
That's awesome.
I've seen
Wow.
both sides of it.
Well, thank you so much to Bo Doherty, the president of Special Olympics Connecticut, and Nicholas Foligno, who is a committee member and volunteer for Special Olympics of CT. Keep us updated on what happens, moving forward.
Yeah.
And for their virtual Special Olympics, do you guys have a date yet, or?